Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday to everyone. I want to thank you for joining us for this webinar. The title of this webinar is called Rebrand with a Plan, 3 Things to Consider When Refreshing Your Corporate Look, hosted by Enercon. I see we have some returning viewers. I want to thank you for joining us and welcome back to the platform. For our new viewers, thank you for joining us. Enercon is your power system integration solutions expert. We have the power to prevail over any problem worldwide. We develop custom engineering solutions to meet our customers' exact specifications and requirements. Our main facility is located in East Peoria, Illinois. That is where we do all the designing, manufacturing, and testing. We have produced over 50,000 projects to date, not only domestically, but around the world in 110 different countries. I'm your host, Sean Lott. I am the Director of Business Development. I am located in the Enercon Business Development Office in Huntsville, Alabama. Before I introduce today's guest speaker, I encourage you to ask questions during the presentation by clicking the Q&A tab. We will try to answer your questions as the brief is going in stride, but if not, we'll certainly address those questions at the end. And now I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, John Edburg. John joined the Enercon family this year in 2021 as our Director of Marketing, and we're so excited to have him. He has an intense passion for creating and implementing unique marketing strategies that consistently exceed return on investment expectations. His personal philosophy is to always expand the boundaries of success and never settle for the status quo. He has over 20 years of marketing experience, and he holds a master's degree in integrated marketing communications. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. John Edburg.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today in this presentation. So this is really exciting for me. Rebrand with a plan, three things to consider when refreshing your corporate look. This is something that we actually just went through ourselves at Enercon. So while it's fresh on our minds, we decided that this is going to be a great opportunity to bring this to our clients and individuals that are interested in this as they go through their own brand journey. So the 3 things that I want to really kind of point out is, the considerations is, will the rebrand align with and help achieve the company's business objectives? Those are the first things you really should ask yourself when you go through this exercise. The second is, what story does the brand need to tell customers, right? Your brand is relatable to customers, and if your customers don't relate, then you're missing something there, right? And then third, almost most importantly, is what resources will the company need to leverage in order to implement the brand? There's a lot of different steps that go along with this, and there's a big team effort that has to happen to be successful in a rebrand of a company. So let's think about the benefits of rebranding. Definitely increase brand awareness within your industry, which typically falls into increased sales. That's something we're all looking for, right? Increase loyalty. You want those repeat customers, and you want them to feel like they're working with a professional company. That's often what they're looking for to make sure that they can get their needs met. Increase market share. That also ties into increased sales. And then, overall lower expenses and higher staff retention. Your brand actually impacts internally as well as externally, so it's important to really keep up with it in that regard. Your employees are your biggest brand ambassadors, so when they feel good about your brand, they perform better, and they're getting the name out there almost in a better way than in a more organic way than just advertising alone. So that first question, will the rebrand align with our business objectives? So let's look at some companies and how they really go through this. There's typically about 7 reasons that companies rebrand. And companies typically look at rebranding about every 7 to 10 years. So these are the big reasons why, okay? So a change in corporate direction. The existing brand may look outdated or unprofessional. A need to really stand out from your competition. You have an opportunity in the marketplace to capitalize, and a new brand would really influence that. You might need to mitigate reputational issues. or to better represent corporate values. And then the other area too that we see is mergers and acquisitions. As companies merge, what does that brand look like, and what does that experience look like for their customers? So let's go into a few examples here. So GM is one of the oldest automotive companies in the nation, right? So in 1938, you can see where they started with their logo. 1964, you see where really that first rebrand happened, right? So they have the blue in there now, they got the line underneath. And then you go into what I call brand refresh. It's not a huge transformation, but it's enough to really keep up with the times. 2001 to 2010, think about it. We went through really a very huge tech phase in the nation, in the world actually, right? So Apple really grew, Microsoft, all those companies, and you saw a lot of icons, and you saw this little wave in the icons. So that was really relevant for the time. Then you move into up to 2021, and their present brand, really a pretty strong change. You see the lowercase, but this is to align with their corporate direction, right? So GM is actually transitioning into getting rid of and phasing out the internal combustion engine and moving into more electrical vehicles, right? So that's their future, and that's what really this logo and brand mark symbolizes. To the point where there's even like these little hints in the logo to emphasize that direction as well. So look at the M. Even though it's a little bit different, it actually symbolizes a plug for plug in, and that's all intentional with their brand. So for us, we have multiple reasons. We want to really update our look. We also want to differentiate from the competition. And then we also have unique opportunities that we're going to be targeting for the future growth of the company. So when we looked at our brand, our old brand mark, we decided that we're going to put this up and really do the research and the legwork to get into it. So we analyzed 38 different competitors. And what I'll ask for you is take a quick second to try to find us in the mix here. As you can see, we really don't stand out. If you found us yet, or if you haven't found us, we're right in the middle there, right? You see a lot of green, a lot of blue, and this is in the industry that we service. So what we want to do is find out how we could stand out visually from our competition. So after analyzing this, we saw that most of the companies, for some reason, chose green and blue and then black. We saw areas of opportunity with yellow, some dark blue, purple, which wouldn't make sense for us, and white and gray. So what we came up with was, how does that influence our brand, and what would be really relevant to telling that story? So visually, we chose a golden yellow as well as a blue background, and this will go in tie into our story that we'll dive into in a few more slides. So now I ask, take a look at us now compared to what the slide before, and you can really see the difference in how we stand out, in our competition. Why is this relevant? When are you ever going to be on the same page as all these other ones? Well, think about it. If we are in advertising in a trade publication, and how many of these other competitors are in there, we stand out. If we're at a trade show and we have these colors within our booth and our logos out there, we stand out from everybody else that's in there. So it really does help when you're a B2B company standing out in these instances of touch points with our clients and prospects. So a need to mitigate reputational issues. Companies go through ups and downs, and some get hit like really hard. In 2005, the Lance Armstrong Foundation was founded. I'm sure everybody can remember, like, all the yellow wristbands were out there, super trendy. Everybody had them. But this is a great foundation. It focused on Lance Armstrong's journey through his overcoming his cancer, right? Excuse me. So at this time in 2009, Lance Armstrong actually came out of retirement and the foundation exploded. $43 million in annual contributions was at their peak. Everybody rallied behind this. and it was one of the most popular foundations out there, right? But then this happened. 2013, we had the big scandal, right? Lance was stripped of his 7 tour wins. It was the doping scandal. And from there, the impact to the foundation, I think the most recent analytics I saw was from 2018. Their contributions actually went down from 43 million to $2.5 million a year. So a huge impact with losing and being associated with Lance Armstrong. So what the company did in 2020 is change directions completely for their brand. What you're going to see is a new logo. You're going to see new imagery. A lot of it's focused on female imagery and cancer overall versus one person's story. So it's really a drastic change from Lance Armstrong heavy into this new future, which will is designed to help the company grow. So another great reason is changing corporate values. You saw this with CVS Caremark. They're one of the largest pharmacies in the country, in the world, as a matter of fact, right? So as strong as they were, they decided to change their corporate values and really take on a health approach. So instead of just being a store, they wanted to be an advocate for healthcare in general and in their consumers' health, more importantly. So what you saw is CVS Health, and this brand mark really emphasizes, and it gets to the point of what they do. But not only are they talking the talk, they're walking the walk, right? They stopped selling tobacco products in their stores. They moved candy products from the front into the in the back, so it's not easily accessible or top of mind. So two of the biggest things, tobacco and sugar, are major health problems in this country, and they addressed it. They took the financial hits when they got rid of those products, but overall their brand grew. Now, one of my favorite stories out there, and this is really the holy grail for any marketing person, was the merger and acquisition of Citigroup and Travelers, right? So these are great entities. One was known for their financial services. The other one's really tied into the insurance side, right? So when these two corporations came together, they had that brand equity and they didn't want to lose it. So what they did was they merged components of their brand identities into a new logo on the bottom there. So you're still going to see Citi as that first part of the logo for Citicorp. And then you see the umbrella notes in there as well, even down to the T and that hook, right? All intentional. What was cool about this is this design was actually done within the first 10 minutes of the project on the back of a napkin. The designer had this, kept it as an ace upper sleeve, and waited until they presented a few more ideas up front. And when they felt that the client was ready to accept this new idea, they pulled this out, and this is what everybody loved and went with. So it's really the holy grail of branding exercises, and a great experience of how to do it right. Now, this one's still on the fence. This next example, this is a more recent merger of equals. BB&T and SunTrust, a couple of the largest banks and financial institutions in the country. They had a ton of brand equity and really well known in their space. But when they merged, they decided to go and form a new entity, and it's Truist. The brand marks are not even close to looking the same. So this is something that really professionals in the industry are kind of scratching their head at as, is this actually going to propel the company forward on their journey, or is this going to be a hindrance because they're losing that brand equity overall? Do we have any questions, to this point? Okay.
No, not yet, John. Not yet.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Sean. So our next part, what story does the brand need to tell customers? Your brand is something that customers relate to, right? And you got to think, as a company, you could only influence your brand is the perception of the brand that the customers really make and how they interpret your story through their experiences, through how they consume that. So that's really what you want to try to do, is really influence the consumers and their mindset towards your company. So when we look into marketing, you always hear that it's an art and a science, right? So the science part is, through data, and some of the things you're going to do in a brand story when you're developing this background, just like a great novel, right? You hear these authors go out and they do a ton of research, they get in the field, they do all this, so they understand what they're writing about, right? So this is the same thing in the corporate world, right? You want to audit your current performance. You want to look at, what you're doing in marketing now, the positioning, the perception, your business goals. And then you're going to dive into a little bit more research into, what's the industry landscape? What are some opportunities out there? How are you standing against your competitors? That consumer research as well. I think one of the biggest things that you see that's often overlooked is the psychology part of it, right? Behavioral science is, really blowing up out there, but the purchasing behavior, the client motivation, the decision-making process, and really some of those brain hacks that we are just instilled with, just primal instincts, through the psychology process of making decisions as you go through your life. From there, you just take all that and you really distill it down to the art part, right? So you get the ideation, you get the fun creative side going, and it's the generating ideas for new brand messages, the visual symbolism, what's your collateral going to look like? How are you going to really bring this to life visually, and as an experience for your clients?
John, I do have a question here. Because you've been talking about the importance of understanding and writing a brand story from a outward perspective. So you're looking at what the customer sees of the company.
Mm-hmm.
How does that correlate to the importance of the brand story, the brand narrative inward, so internally to the internally to the company, I should say? Yeah,
it's really important. Because it helps really define, when you write your brand story, some of the things that you should look at is going to be, how do you weave it in your mission statement, right, for the corporation? On top of that, it's going to be, how do you tie in your core values, right? So that's something that benefits internally and externally as well. So as you define the company, the next slide we're going to get into is more of the character, right? So the character is what really relates to the individual. Again, just like a novel, you're relating to that character and their story. So internally, people understand, what they're doing, what the business is doing, the direction the company is going, and they become more of that brand ambassador. So it's really important to connect internally as well.
Okay, excellent.
So again, data, right? Look at all this. And this is a great example where your internal employees, your key stakeholders, your board members, your executive team, everybody should be playing a part in this. Have focus groups with customers, with prospects, with peer groups. You look at sentiment analysis. What is what's your clients saying now? Are they happy? Are they is there things that you can improve on? Social media, what's out there? Do interviews, do that competitive analysis, find out how you're going to stand out. When you get all this data in, you're just going to make better decisions about the process and moving forward with the story for your brand. So again, we just talked about, I hinted a little bit at finding your character, right? So every story is only as good as the character that they have. So typically in marketing, there's 12 brand archetypes. And these are what really make your company relatable in that personality aspect to clients, prospects, and your employees, right? So you look at some examples here. So like the outlaw, that's a Harley Davidson, right? They're a rebel. They're all about liberty and being a little bit different outside the box, right? You look at the sage, and the sage is going to be more like think about Harvard University or CNN, where it's more informational. They're educating you, right? They're that kind of the go-to for information. Then you have it's fun is like the jester down in the right hand corner. Think of M&Ms or Geico, where it's fun. They stand out because they use humor. So those are these are all the characters, and it's really how do you find the character that relates to your business and how you're going to go to market and tell that story.
Can you think of an example where the character match fell flat? So they picked the wrong character, and it just was an abysmal failure just by the fact that they just didn't pick who they were. They picked the wrong one.
Yeah, they don't really talk a lot about the ones out there that kind of fell flat. So that one's a little bit challenging. I'd have to think about that a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, one that comes to mind, you know, because I was in the military, because all the stuff with marketing, you know, was kind of a background noise, if you will, to development of organizations and units in the military, especially in the Army. But we had the Be All You Can Be campaign for a long time, and then around 2000 timeframe, they changed it from Be All You Can Be to Army of One. Now I would not know. I think that was more of a Army of One. So it's like, it's all about you, all about me. You know, what can you provide to the service versus a selfless service aspect of things. And so it fell flat from a team perspective. It was more individualistic, and it was hard to embrace. And so they immediately pivoted after spending millions of dollars. I want to say it was upwards of 30 to 40 $1 million on that ad campaign of Army of One, maybe even higher than that. Immediately pivoted to the Army Strong slogan is what they came up with in that campaign. So they embrace more of the magician side of things.
Right.
I'm just curious about any other type of examples like that.
No, that's good, because it sounds like they went from the everyday man into the next one. So in the everyday man, and you know, you look at that, that's more like a Target, where it's kind of relatable in that aspect.
Right, exactly.
Versus that specialty or that transformation kind of feel that they go for now.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So for us, again, looking at that competitive analysis, what we found is, you know, a lot of them fall into the ruler side, right? Kind of like a Mercedes, they want to be the best, and they tell you that they're the best, and they got that ego like they're the best, right? Then you have the caregiver, which, you know, they want to be able to, you know, really in an instance of need, they're going to be there for you, right? But it's really, it tells you, it's definitive of almost like scare tactics. Something goes out, we're going to be there, and we're going to be able to protect you from it. And then you have the magician, where, you know, they want to be more of that, you know, transformative kind of a company in itself. You think of like a Disney or a Dyson, where they're, you know, try to be more innovation and moving forward in there. For us, what we saw is there was five archetypes that were not representative. We had the outlaw, the jester, the everyman, the lover, and the hero. Most of those didn't fit for what we needed, but we did find something that really worked for us based on our history, based on the direction of the company, and really what we do and can provide to our clients. And for us, it was the hero or the champion, right? So when you think of this, you know, Enercon might not be the face of the project, but we're the backbone that gets the job done. We're the one that steps in and helps people and companies, you know, we give them the power to prevail. We help them champion their projects to get to the end goal. So as we're a subcontractor or contract manufacturer, you know, we're often, sometimes we do interact with the end user, but a lot of times we're, you know, in between. And you know, that's something where we embrace, and it's something that we're moving forward with as, you know, the power to prevail. You know, on our defense side, we're the power behind the power. We actually develop, you know, the PPU, the prime power unit for the THAAD missile system, and it's one of those things where, you know, we are kind of we have a subcontractor of a defense contractor, and then there's us, and we develop and do the whole project. So we're embracing that and moving forward with that positioning. So after you kind of get that narrative going and get that outline, you know, the next thing to do is really illustrate, right? So just like a comic book, you have the story, and then you really want to get that graphic part in there, and you kind of merge that whole feel and that whole experience into it. So some of the things that we're going to go into next really emphasize your overall brand story through the visual representation of the brand. So this is where I say the psychology part comes in. So tap into this, don't overlook it. You know, play up to the ego, play up to the id, you know, subconscious and your conscious, because there's things that, you know, are brain hacks. There's things that we are, you know, people in general, and almost, you know, everything in nature, you can really see takes the path of least resistance. So the easier you are, and the easier message can be consumed, the better you're going to be. So we look at one of the biggest things in design, and that's color, right? So the business of color, color has meaning. Color has, it's really instilled with us. You look at something like red. Red evokes excitement, and it's been proven in studies that raises your pulse. You think about for your appetite, you typically eat more when around red. So you see a lot of restaurants have red in their palettes and inside their stores. But that is a primal instinct, right? So red, even back to caveman time, you're either you're the food or you're going to or something else is food, right? So you're always looking at that, and that's kind of instilled in there, and that's why you get that kind of that primal instinct of the excitement going. You look at blue, where it's something that's more calming, tranquil, and that's everything we're exposed to, right? Blue sky is totally calming. The water around us, the world is primarily ocean, right? So we're very familiar with the color blue. It's calming for us. And then you look at green. Green really represents a lot of growth in agriculture. So when you put that in there, that growth aspect is something that really highlights in the message. But it's also easy to understand for some of the brands that utilize green, that's what their primary business is. And we're going to see in the next slide how companies actually leverage these color palettes, and take a look and see what you think.
One quick question: the colors, are they? I know you said it's primal, but when you say primal, is it specific to like American type culture, or does it transcend culture? So this psychology of colors, is it boundaryless? So it goes beyond, it's universal, is it global?
Yeah, a little bit of both, right? So you look at some of you tie this into multicultural marketing, and you start getting into there. So we're not even going that deep into international, but you look at like in Japan, in that culture. Here in America, black is worn for funerals, right? And that's the case there. But in Japan, white is really the traditional colors that represent that. But for us, white is more for a wedding, right? So you look at the differences in colors and how they interact, and it's really going to look at overall, how you get your brand out there. For us, in America, even down to your packaging, right? Golf balls come in packages of 3s. In other countries, 3 is a superstition number. It's a bad number to have. So golf balls come in packages of 4. It's all in how you package, and it's really understanding your client base.
Okay, it's very interesting.
So now we look at brands, and this is how it lines up to some of the colors that we just went over, right? So look at like peaceful and growth. John Deere stands out right away, right? They're agriculture. It makes sense. You look at optimism and warmth and clarity. UPS. You're really optimistic that your package is going to get there on time. That's what they do. They're making that promise. Excitement. You look at Nintendo. That's fun. You look at Target. I could tell you my wife gets tremendously excited when she sees that sign, and I could tell you that my pulse starts going up when I see the bill. So I know that for a fact that correlates.
John, we do have another question while we're talking about psychology. The question is, do you have any books that you would recommend to learn more about the psychology behind marketing?
Yeah, we could actually get those out there and listed. But there's some great design books that go just into looking at different designs. The psychology part, I have a person I feel is just a great individual that specializes in this, and it's her name is Nancy Harhut. She's a brander, and she really looks into the behavioral science of this. There's a lot outside of branding that people look at into their marketing, and we could definitely put that out there and some links to her presentations. But really, it's fascinating when you get into the psychology of it.
Okay.
Okay. So here's a little sample, right? So immediately, did you feel any kind of emotion to this? It's kind of that green, kind of mold, kind of, or it could look like mountains, right? So it's a different perception when you see this symbol in green than when you see it in its normal color. Now you see it and it's exciting, it's fun. You probably have a craving for French fries, and sorry if everybody goes to McDonald's after this for lunch, but it's the difference in the colors that really also impacts the brand and the symbolism. For us, there's also the repetition out there and the likeness of certain symbols that helps tell our story. So we have this golden yellow color that we for our main logo, right? And it's the power to prevail. So we really emphasize on power. So you look at the sun; it's always represented as yellow, right? It's the most powerful thing in our solar system. You look at light bulbs; they're always represented in yellow. And not only are they electricity, something that we do to keep the lights on, but it's also innovation, right? That's something that Enercon does very well. We have engineers that help prevail over these tough integration challenges. The lightning bolt, yellow again. And this color, literally represents what we do. We are power, we are electrical power. Then you tap into, the hero aspect of us, right? Batman, one of the most popular ones that are superheroes out there, and the symbol is yellow. Then you look at the gold medal and you look at that the yellow gold medal and the gold certificate. Really, it's the best at what we do. We understand our craft. We're number one at what we do. And our quality is there. We have that certified quality. So all these colors really make really emphasize our brand, and it's those easy life hacks that you've seen this throughout in so many different ways that makes that connection subconsciously with our colors.
Right. I also say it's interesting that Enercon is a 46-year-old company. So when Ed Tangle founded the company in 1975, its identity hasn't changed since that point. I mean, it was founded on a business to go and help people overcome their problems, their issues, to prevail over them. So it's interesting how the brand has morphed and kind of enhanced that messaging, that identity, and that story over a 46-year period. And I know you've looked at all the different ways in which Enercon has morphed different brands over time to now we're at this stage. It's just interesting to kind of see that over a spectrum of time of 46 years on how that has morphed, and it's actually enhanced the original identity of the company itself.
Right. So one of the things I've always been asked throughout my career is, do I need an icon to be iconic? And I will say this, an icon standing alone takes a ton of money, a ton of repetition, and a ton of time for it to really be able to hold its own on the market, right? So we know Apple, we've seen it everywhere. We know Twitter. Look how much engagement you have with Twitter, and then Puma. That's another one that's big, that's out there, but it's had decades and decades to really build that brand equity out. But when you take an icon and you put it together with a typeface treatment, there's some good points and some bad points. It does stand out, but you really have to be cautious about how you utilize it, right? So you look at Adidas in the three-stripe life, right? Adidas, when you look at the mountain there, it's actually a mountain. It represents a mountain and overcoming the challenges and that you have to go through in life, right? So that's their brand. But if you don't know that story, you don't know that that's a mountain there, right? Amazon is a little bit more literal, right? Everything from A to Z, and it's got that little quirky smile to it, so it makes you happy when you buy stuff on Amazon. But then you go back into Hyundai. Now you can see predominantly the H is there, which makes sense for it's the first letter in their name. But behind that, the symbol is two people shaking hands. You can never get that unless you knew the internal story and was aware of that design function. So does it enhance in that aspect? No. Does it enhance because you remember it, the Hyundai and the H in Hyundai? Yes, it does. So we really focused a lot on the brand market itself, but branding, it's a company-wide effort, and there's so many different touch points that emphasize your brand. You look at photography, for instance. For us, we want to show that we're doing the work. We don't want to be fake, right? We're not fake in what we do. We're the experts. We're gritty. We get into it, and we're cool with it to get the job done. You look at, dynamic versus still. You got these posed, photographs. These are totally off what we're trying to accomplish. So really be cautious of your photography because it tells its own story, right? Picture says 1,000 words. Typography is another thing. So this is something where, again, it goes with repetition, but it's also consistency throughout your company. When you look at the typography, you really want to have brand guides that are out there for your visual representation, but you want to make sure it's complementing everything that you're doing. We have a modern font that's modified in our logo, so it's really important that we also have a modern font and modern feel that complements that as we have in our ads and in our overall advertising and marketing materials. Graphic elements are a great way to emphasize your brand and enhance that experience as well. For us, we use this vertical rectangle for our headlines. Visually, it helps guide the eye to where we want our readers to start reading the copy, and it gives them an entry point. And then it also complements where the logo placement is in that blue on the bottom. So it really draws your eye through the copy. But that marking in and of itself, as repetition goes and we use it more, that'll become a symbol that is relatable to us. So people could just see our copy, see that line. They also know that's going to be part of Enercon's treatment. So sound, this is something that's really, as we get into more dynamic media, sound plays a big factor in this. Every time you stream Netflix, you hear those first two notes, and you know that it's going to be a Netflix streaming movie, right? It's different than you could see that movie elsewhere, but you're on Netflix when you hear those two notes. So it's really important. It emphasizes your brand. And then motion, again, as we get into dynamic content, more companies are putting out videos on social media, on web, and they have their logo that's going to be animated in some ways. Disney's a great example of that, where their motion, it's Tinkerbell flying over the castle, but that castle has changed in multiple movies, right? So it represents what they're doing for the movie and that theme, but you always see that motion and it's a Disney movie. So then we get into the resources and what does the company need to leverage, in order to implement the rebrand. And it's quite a bit. This next slide really gets you thinking about, it's not just a logo, but where does that logo touch? It's the culture that you're developing through your brand and that story and how you implement it through, even, through customer service, right? So you see packaging, signage. You really have to understand all the places that this is going to be, right? So if you're if you're a smaller company, you might have one sign on a shop. If you are a larger, company that has multiple locations, you got to think about all that, right? So it's the who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much for a rebrand. So the who, there's a Smurf for every job, right? So, you look for marketing Smurf, your agency Smurf, down to the IT Smurf. When you start looking at building the team out, you want to make sure that's covering every aspect of the brand. And that's really going to be crucial because as you go into finding out and, the where, what, and why part of it, these individuals are really going to help you facilitate that search. They're also going to help facilitate that implementation. And they're also going to be advocates for the brand change. So what, where, and why? Take physical inventory of what you have. And it's not just a physical inventory. Think about diving into, all your files. How much of the digital, the digital aspect, the digital collateral, do you have forms that go out? As a letterhead that's, is it 100 different forms that have your logo on the letterhead? Do you need it there? Make these determinations of what's on it, what kind of materials, where's it at, and then why do you need the logo on it? Because it might be something that you don't need going forward. The other thing I would say is don't forget the logos outside the company's domain. So if you have sponsorships, say you're just a sponsor of the local gym, right? Your old logo is probably on that. You probably want to change that out so it matches everything else that's going on. Or if you're a sponsor of a major ballpark, you're going to have signage that needs to be changed out there. So that all is a factor. and the win. So if you're a smaller company, you could probably do this overnight. Flip the switch and your brand is up, old brand is down. But larger companies typically take a phased approach. So you might roll out internally and a little bit externally. You might need to start working on getting signs for all your locations. That could be a big ticket item. It could be a lengthy process, right? So from design to actually install of a building sign could be 3 months. It also could be a 6-figure project. So based on budget, based on when you want to accomplish this, a phased approach might be the best way to do it. And then you look at the how and how much, right? So how much can be done internally? This would be cost savings. If you have a great team that has a lot of experience in this, a graphic designer, a marketing manager that's gone through this, this brand exercise in the past, web developer, if they have the experience to do it internally, you could save quite a bit. You could do a lot of legwork there. But if not, then you got to look at vendors, right? So you want to see if your current agency has the capabilities of doing this, or if you actually need to find an agency that specializes in branding and utilize somebody in that capacity. Well, how will the project be managed? You just saw there's a lot of individuals in play with a rebrand. Is this something that you bring in a project manager to make sure that everything's moving forward? You look at brand materials. How are you disposing of this? Does it make sense to utilize all the collateral materials that you have in stock until they run out and then reorder the new brand? I mean, you did spend money up front to get that done. So are you comfortable with throwing that out and understanding the costs for doing that? How will the brand change be communicated to the team, customers, and stakeholders? There's a good opportunity for PR during this time. There's a lot of different ways that you want to tell the story to your stakeholders and your employees, right? You want to get them behind it. You want them to become advocates and feel like they know the brand story. Think about how success looks, right? We talked about before why there's a lot of benefits to this, but think of what the benefits mean to you. Think about, what's the ROI? What do you want to get out of this? And once you make those determinations, put KPIs in place to measure that and see what success looks for a corporate rebrand. And then you think about, how much will the company need to spend to get this done? I will be the first to admit I'm not exactly a math person. So this is where I bring in like a CFO. We go over budgets. He gives me a number that he's comfortable with, and then I give him a number that he's not comfortable with, and then we meet in the middle, and then we go somewhere from there. So that's my approach. So now is a great time for me to stop talking and listen to any questions that's out there.
All right, John, thank you so much. There's a lot of information to digest, and it's very interesting how all the magic happens, so to speak, behind the scenes when it comes to marketing and branding. Very informative. It's still not too late, so if you do have a question, just hit the Q&A tab and ask your question, and we'll certainly get John to answer it to the best of his abilities. As you see, he's a wealth of knowledge, so you might as well ask him now while you got him, versus paying somebody to do it. You know what I mean? So one of the questions that popped up during this is there a difference between doing marketing via mailers versus digital marketing? Like, are there advantages and disadvantages? Should you do both? Should you just focus on one?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. As Sean said earlier, I have a master's degree in integrated marketing, and really what that looks at is and that's kind of the old school integration where it looks at everything in marketing and puts it together, and how do you emphasize and really build out that message. Statistically, direct mail, people think it's dead, but it's one of the biggest producers, strongest producers number-wise in statistics, right? So for your ROI, direct mail is really kind of it's always been tried and true, but you get bigger results when you also pair that with a digital campaign. So email and direct mail really kicks it up a notch. And then when you throw in an aspect of like a call effort, right? So you have your sales team call and on those pieces, that increases your ROI as well. So you really want to look at how you integrate all the touch points. And I call them, when you market, it's really how many touch points are you giving to your prospects and your clients, and how many different ways you're doing it. And the more you could really integrate those, the better your results would be for each one of those pieces.
Okay. All right. The next question is you mentioned about budget and marketing, and you just kind of you gave a it's kind of like an overarching, get with the CFO and then we'll figure out a number how much you want to spend, and then I'll give you a bigger number, and then we'll figure out where to meet as far as marketing goes. But is there a kind of like a rule of thumb? Like if you have a gross revenue of X, is there a certain like a guide you should follow on how much of that should you actually dedicate to marketing?
Yeah, there is. Typically, the formula is about 10% revenue should go to marketing, and about 20% revenue should come from marketing. So that's really where you want to start your budget in a lot of cases, if you're capable of doing that. If not, it's also going to be on the comfort level of the company and what you really want to accomplish that year.
Okay, so you said 10% roughly, and then you should expect to receive a 20% return on investment. That's how you kind of measure the success of your marketing campaign.
Right.
Earlier, you also mentioned that return on investment is also measured by KPIs. Can you describe what key performance indicators are and how that relates to ROIs?
Yeah, you really look at setting the goals. So your key performance indicators are going to be unique to you and your campaigns. So, for a digital campaign that's out there, are you building awareness? Are you trying to get more through social media? Maybe it's more clicks, more likes. You set those as you go along, and those are indications that you prove out to have an ROI on the monetary side as it comes through. So you kind of back into the numbers and what you've seen through data, industry data as well, and you set those goals for yourself. The same could be, for the sales side, right? So sales and marketing should really fall under overall business development. And you look at how the sales side goes for KPIs as well. So if, to get a closed deal, it takes 5 proposals. To get 5 proposals, it takes 10 meetings. For 10 meetings, it takes, 40 calls. That's how you break in your KPIs to say, all right, what's measurable throughout this time to get to the end? Am I measuring the call effort from my sales team, down to is marketing measuring the touch points to the client as we go through this sales funnel?
Okay. And my last question here is we're in a new day and age with COVID and the pandemic and its impacts on business and how we do business currently. Have there been any change or impacts from a marketing and branding perspective when it comes to the effects of the COVID pandemic that's ongoing?
Yeah, I mean, there's some challenges because it's harder to get to people's desks, but at the same time, now you have better relationships because you get to their cell phones. So there's definitely new tools that are out there to leverage that. We use, we're currently testing the version of Seamless AI. It's a great tool to get prospect information down from email to desk phones to cell phones and communicate that way. You see a lot more email going out, but you also see a lot more people, ignoring the email. Digital is great. It's cost effective. But when you look at these statistics, it has one of the higher ROIs, but it has the actual lower numbers overall for success because it's just, it's a numbers game. And it really comes into that it's cost effective to do. Where direct mail, like I mentioned, a lot of people are getting mail forward to their houses. People are seeing it more. So direct mail actually kind of ticked up a little bit during this time, just because of that. You look at, Chicago's a huge radio market. Radio probably went down during this time because, drive times in Chicago, it could take you 2 hours to get from the western suburbs to, the city. If people are not in their cars, our company is going to be advertising through radio. Out of home, if people are not out of home, that's going to be another impact on, media rates and availability for space out there.
Okay. Got another question. So how can a small business fine-tune its message to emphasize how they can add more value than its larger competitors?
Yeah, one of the things that really go down to is what services are you offering over the larger competitors? They might have more resources, but are you more nimble? Are you, a lot of times, are you is a customer at 800 number, or is it Jim from down the street talking to you and you know them and you have that relationship? What are the little things that set you aside? And from there, it's going back to building your brand archetype. What's your character and what's your character base, and how do you carry that forward and let them know that that's what it is? You could definitely go on the attack and pick apart weaknesses of your larger competitors, or you could really just rest on yourself and what do you do best, and communicate that out to them.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, because Enercon is a small business, but some of the things we do, you wouldn't think that we were so small. It's amazing, especially the large tactical packages that we put together for the prime power unit, for example, for the THAAD missile defense system. I mean, I was in the Army for 25 years, and I had no idea that this little small company in East Peoria that has 80 folks in it produced like one of the highest technically advanced power packaging power units that the Army has ever owned. And it's being utilized to this day overseas in 5 remote locations around the globe. And then, so when you peel it back, you talk about the backbone. Enercon is the backbone of that. But when you start telling people that you become bigger than what you are in the minds of people because of the accomplishments that you can achieve based off your expertise. So you kind of like leverage your own expertise and make yourself your own niche to make yourself larger in the minds of others, if that makes sense.
Right. The other great way that you got to look at too is taking credit for things that you do, and in that nature, like Sean said, it's something that wasn't out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's crafted in marketing. It's how you communicate it out. For instance, Enercon just recently raised our minimum wage to $18 an hour. That's one of the highest paying companies in this area. Higher than hospitals, higher than Costco, higher than Amazon, CVS, where everybody's looking to go to $15 an hour. We jumped to 18, and that's something where you tell people we are all about quality. We're helping people prevail, not only on our client side, but internally as well. We are helping our our internal clients and our staff accomplish more. So really look for everything and find out where you can tell that story through what you're doing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point, John. So John, thanks again. We're coming to the top of the hour, and that's when we want to wrap things up. So I want to thank you for your time and your expertise and your putting all this packaging, this stuff together and gathering all the information. I know you've been doing it for 20 plus years, so you're kind of an old hat as far as doing it, but your delivery was spot on as far as being relatable, so we can all understand the importance of marketing and branding and what that means to a company, not only the customers, but also the employees of that company. So I really appreciate that from a formative perspective. I also want everybody to know, if you're not plugged into us already, that pun was intentional. Go to we're all over social media. So all of our social media channels, you can go to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Make sure you like or subscribe or follow the page, and you'll get all current information that Enercon is doing. You also get updated information on webinars that we do once a month. Our next webinar is October 26th, and we have a company, So Bright, that's underneath Enercon, that's going to be our presenters for that, and that'll close us out for 2021. And we look forward to a new round of webinars in 2022, and on a new platform as well. So we're pretty excited about that. So if you have any friends or coworkers or anybody that missed this or missed any of the other previous webinars, I would direct you to the YouTube channel. And we have a whole bunch of videos there. So subscribe to that, forward those videos, use them, share them as you see fit. Everything is always free when it comes to this. It's free information, and we just want to encourage dialogue, information exchange, and sharing with you some of our expertise and capabilities, not only in-house with Enercon, but also with businesses that we partner with as well. So on that note, John, thanks again. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks a lot, Sean.